Good morning. Hello. My name's Kirsty Meddings. I'm a product manager at Crossref. Crossref is a fairly small not-for-profit organisation working for scholarly publishing, and we work to make it very easy for anyone really to find, cite, locate and assess and link to content. I'd say we're a small organisation, but we do quite a few things and run a number of services that are part of the infrastructure of scholarly publishing. But today I'm going to talk specifically about one service that we run that's called Crossmark. I've put the subtitle of Metadata Plus because Crossref is really all about collecting metadata from publishers to run the services that we can provide. But Crossmark really is kind of our beacon of metadata, if you like. It's where we pull all of the really interesting stuff that publishers give us together to show to readers. So you may have come across this little symbol when you've been perusing journals on the web. It's a little red and blue symbol with the word Crossmark next to it. Here on the Lancet, it's just underneath the author list there. Sometimes it has the text "click for updates" next to it. Here's an example on, I think this is BMJ Open. Again, this is down below the abstract and it says Crossmark click for updates. Or you may more recently have seen a button like the one at the bottom of this page. This is the NIHR Journals Library, and right at the bottom there, I hope you can see there's a slightly similar symbol, but check for updates, same kind of thing. We updated the Crossmark button last year, so you'll see both versions of this out there on the web at the moment. And again here on PLOS, I think it's in the bottom right-hand corner, little symbol and check for updates. So if you've come across these on the web, and I hope you've seen one or two of them at least, this is our Crossmark service, and I'm going to explain to you now what it is and how it can help you find out more about the content that you're reading. So Crossmark is a service that we run for our member publishers, and it uses the metadata that they send to us, to Crossref, to uniformly tell readers about a number of things. Most importantly, perhaps, it tells them about the status of a piece of content, whether it's up to date, whether any changes have taken place, whether it's been updated, corrected, retracted, and so on. Crossmark will also tell readers very clearly about any funding information, the funding behind the research that has resulted in that publication. It can display authors' ORCID IDs, it can give a publication history, information on rights and licensing, and much more. And I'll show you how it looks in a moment. As I said, perhaps the key thing about Crossmark is that it will relate the publication status of a piece of content. When we talk about the status, that's anything that happens after publication that can affect the crediting or interpretation of the work. So any of these things that are listed on this slide. Some of these are relatively common in scholarly publishing. It's not particularly unusual to see corrections or errata pop up on a journal article. Some of them are more serious, such as retractions. And quite often these things happen sometime after publication. So it may be months or even years later that a mistake is noticed and a correction applied, or that the research is decreed not to be accurate and something can be retracted. So it's not just the point at when something's published that's important, but as that research and that publication goes on, things can happen that readers really need to know about. So one of the main purposes of Crossmark is to ensure that there's a consistent and reliable way for readers to be notified about these important changes. This is really important where PDFs are concerned. So many people download and store PDF articles of the research that they're interested in on local devices. And then if you go back to reference that at any given time after the download, you've got no way of knowing if a correction's been issued for this article because it's sitting locally on your machine. Unless you take the time to go and dig out the web page that you downloaded it from, which you're probably unlikely to do. But if the publisher has added a Crossmark button to their PDF, you can click on the button in this PDF article, and providing that you're online, which most people are on their devices these days, it'll pop up a web page for you with the current status of the document in question. So this is what most people will see most of the time. This confirmation that the document's up to date, a Crossref DOI link that will take you back to the publisher-maintained copy on the publisher's website. And what this box is doing is it's checking the Crossref database in real time and pulling back the latest status update. So even if that PDF is months, years old sitting on your local device, it's getting the latest information about that from Crossref. So So Crossmark buttons also appear very widely on web pages, on the abstract pages of articles. So here is an article, I'm not sure which journal, but it's a biomedical article on the web, and there's a Crossmark button up here in the top right-hand corner. This time, when we click on it, you get the same Crossmark box, but this time there is an update that's been issued for this piece of content. So this is a correction that was issued subsequently. The box changes colour to alert the reader to the fact that there's something of significance here, and it gives a link directly to the correction notice. So then all I need to do at this point is click on the link through to the correction notice, and I'm seeing the changes that have been made to this piece of content. Here's another example. This time it's a crystallography journal. The button is over there on the right. And when we click on this one, we find out that this article has in fact been retracted. Again, the box changes colour. It's yellow for corrections, updates, errata. If we find a retraction or a withdrawal, we flag it as red to highlight the importance of that. And there'll be a link in the box to the retraction notice. And the same would apply if you've been in the PDF of that particular article. The retraction's flagged up right there in front of the reader. So that's the first thing to know about the Crossmark button, that it can alert you to any significant changes, which are particularly important if you're about to cite the article in question. But together with these status updates, there's the opportunity for publishers to showcase a wealth of extra metadata in the Crossmark box. These can be things that are routinely found on abstract pages, but more often are things that are not. So I'm going to walk you through an example here from the Journal of Experimental Medicine and all of the information that they've put into their Crossmark box. So, that particular article, no updates, it's current, there are no corrections or errata added to that. But if you scroll down the box, you'll see that there are some other sections that can be expanded. The first of those is authors. And if you expand this section, you'll see a list of all the authors and contributors for that particular article, together with their ORCID IDs, their unique contributor IDs, if they have them, and if the publisher has then forwarded those IDs on to us. And we make those links to the author's profile on the ORCID website. So instantly you've got access to background information on the contributors to this article, and you can follow that through to find out more about what else they have done. There's also information on the funding of the research. So this is taken from acknowledgement sections in papers. The publishers standardise this funding information and send it to Crossref. We receive it as structured metadata, and we're able to display it here in this Crossmark box. So this particular article has funding from the US NIH, and the publisher has also supplied the grant numbers. There are, I think, 4 grant numbers in the box there. So useful background information again for the reader. We'll display the licensing information if the publisher's sent it to us. So this is any terms and conditions that cover use of the article. So in this particular example, there are 2. They can apply to different things. These 2 licenses are concerned with the version of record. Some publishers put up different licenses if you're hoping to text and data mine. There may be particular terms and conditions for that. In this case, where there are 2 licenses, I suspect that this is a piece of content that may be under subscriber access only for a certain period of time. So the first license applies for, say, 12 months, and then after that it becomes freely available under a more open license. But that can all be, again, accessed through the Crossmark box here. One of the more recent features that we've added to the Crossmark box is a section for clinical trial information. Now, this is something that we actually launched last year, but we've been working on it for a number of years. It was actually the brainchild of Daniel Shanahan at Biomed Central and brought to life by a group of medical publishers who worked very closely with us on a pilot for 18 months, possibly even 2 years to get this running. And this is all about linking up the different publications that are writing about the same clinical trial so that the reader can get a better view on all of the reporting of a trial, not just one angle on it. So it aims to tie together research that's published before or during a clinical trial with any subsequent publications that reference that same trial. I'll show you how it works. So this slide here is showing a Crossmark box that is accessed via a button on an article in the BMJ journal Heart. If you go to the clinical trial section, you'll see that in this particular article there is one clinical trial that's being talked about. It has that number NCT00 and it's registered at clinicaltrials.gov. So these 2 pieces of information are what the publisher sent to us, the unique clinical trial number and also the registry in which that trial has been registered. Both are important because although a trial number may be unique within a registry, it may not be unique globally because there are a number of clinical trial registries around the world. But if we have these two pieces of information, we can tie them together to make sure that we are uniquely identifying a trial. And then, if other publishers are sending us the same information, we can find other articles in our database that are also talking about that particular trial. And then what we're doing is displaying a list of these publications threaded together inside the Crossmark box. So in this example, we've gone from one article about a clinical trial to see that there are 3 others that are also talking about the same trial, and we've got links out to them. So the reader can now click out and find out what else is being said or reported about this trial. So having done that, I clicked on one of the links in that box and I'm taken to an article about the same trial in The Lancet. And The Lancet also has a Crossmark button on their abstract page, and clicking on that, I'm back to that list. So it becomes kind of circular, but those publications are threaded, if you like, together, so that readers can click through and really see a much wider set of information. As I said, we only launched this last year, and at the moment we only have 5 publishers who are depositing clinical trial information because we're really only just out of pilot. But even within that small data set, we're already seeing quite a few examples of publications that are threading together around a single trial. So I think we're really excited to see the potential for this. We are going to be getting in touch with all of the publishers who publish in this area to encourage them to join this, because we think this has a huge potential to boost the transparency of science in this particular area. And then finally, in the Crossmark box, there's a section called More Information, and this basically can take any additional information that the publisher feels is valuable to show to the reader. So in this particular example, this publisher has chosen to show that the content has been peer-reviewed and the process is single-blind peer review. The publication history, so when it was received, accepted, published. There's some supplementary materials that they've linked out to, and a copyright statement. But essentially, this section of the Crossmark box is entirely down to the journal or publisher. So depending on your subject area, there may be different things you wish to display, but it's kind of a, tell the reader everything else you think that they might be interested in. So it's incredibly flexible and allows the publisher to really showcase what they have hidden in their metadata. It's a really important part of Crossmark, and in fact of everything that Crossref does, that all of the metadata is available in a machine-readable format through our REST API, which is available at this address here. So anyone can access the API, there's no need to register, you can just come along and query it for any of the metadata that we have from publishers. And this opens up some really interesting opportunities for propagating this metadata, particularly the Crossmark metadata about status updates. So we envisage scenarios such as publishers using the metadata to annotate the references that they have, to flag to readers if something in a reference list has been corrected or retracted, possibly for bibliographic management systems where researchers are storing lists of citations. They could be checked against the Crossref database and the reader could have flagged any updates to that. We're not seeing a huge amount of it happening yet because it's a relatively young service, only 2 or 3 years old, but we think it's got huge potential for other systems out there to flag updates, corrections, and so on and so forth to their users using the Crossref metadata. Just some numbers about Crossmark. Crossref itself has metadata for 85 million different content items, articles, book chapters, conference proceedings. So we're still only at a fraction of that. There are 4.3 million Crossmark buttons out there on scholarly publications. 340 publishers are applying the Crossmark button and sending us that metadata, and I think that's around about 15,000 journals at the moment. So a reasonable amount, but still not as far as we want to get, and we are encouraging all of our Crossref members to get going with this Crossmark service and send that additional metadata and put those buttons on their content. In that metadata at the moment, in those Crossmark buttons, we've seen 40,000 status updates, so those significant updates that could affect the interpretation of the work, corrections, errata, and so on and so forth. Just over 1,500 of those are retractions that we've recorded so far, and at the moment most of this Crossmark metadata is for relatively current content, so the last 2, 3, 4 years. We've not seen a lot of people go into their back file yet, but again we're encouraging to do that. 40,000 corrections so far, and of those 4.3 Crossmark buttons, 2.3, so over half of them, have got some form of additional metadata in terms of either funding or authors' ORCIDs or licensing information. So publishers are really starting to make use of that to get that information out there. So if you do see this Crossmark button, whether it's the old one or our slightly nicer modern new one out there, I would just say it's really well worth clicking on it. It showcases a huge amount of information potentially that could be of not just use but could actually be critical to research if it's concerning updates and so on and so forth. And it just makes sure that you're not going to cite anything that's out of date or has changed. Thank you. These are my contact details, my email, Twitter and ORCID, and the Crossref website will give you plenty more information on Crossmark, and also the URL of our host today. Thank you very much for inviting me.